This is the Rebound Rundown. I'm your host, Paul Fritschner. Your home for college basketball in the Cincinnati area and across the country every Monday through Friday during the season. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Recurring guest on the show, Brandon Ramsey. It's time to talk Kentucky Wildcat basketball. Always great to see you, Brandon. It means the season is right around the corner. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you go subscribe in audio platforms and vice versa. If you're listening to this in your car right now, whenever you get to a safe spot, how about you hop on YouTube and you subscribe to the YouTube channel, because there's going to be a lot of stuff coming on the Rebound Rundown throughout the season. And that includes content about the Kentucky Wildcats. And that's why we're here today to preview Kentucky and what should be a loaded season for the Wildcats. We saw that the other day in their exhibition against Purdue. Now, of course, we have to do the song and dance where we say it was just an exhibition, but it was a whole heck of a lot of fun to watch. And Brandon, I'm sure you'll share in that excitement, because I could tell from your film breakdowns and everything else that there was a lot of positivity to draw out of that exhibition. So how has the offseason been for you? And what are you expecting out of this Kentucky team to start off this show?
The offseason's been great. As you well know, offseason is maybe not even the right word anymore in college basketball, because it's kind of becoming a 365-day-a-year sport with, the transfer portal and, high school recruiting a lot of times getting pushed later and later into the cycle. We're staying busy throughout the summer, to say the least, in the roster building process and all that. And that certainly was once again true with Kentucky this year, building the 2025-2026 roster. But it got to a really exciting place. And then obviously we kind of doubled down on that excitement a little bit on Friday night with a pretty fun exhibition game against preseason number 1 Purdue. And one of the things I said to a lot of people coming out of Friday night, and I would have said the same thing ahead of time too, like, I don't think the result matters very much from Friday night, but I think that you can still take things that you saw happen in real life on the court and be excited about some of those things. And especially when you consider that Purdue largely has a pretty veteran group, like their main guys have been their main guys for several years. That's not necessarily true for Kentucky. Kentucky was also missing their starting point guard and then arguably the best interior defender in college basketball, Jaden Quainance. So things could only look, potentially that much better for Kentucky at full strength. And I thought that both offensively and defensively, for a game that was played on October 24th against a, projected preseason number 1 team, things looked about as good as you could hope for. And again, the fact that Kentucky won by 13 points, I don't necessarily put a ton of stock into that itself, but just when you sit there and watch the film and watch the execution level and all that good stuff, man, it was really, really impressive. It
was extremely impressive. I tweeted it right as the game was coming to an end that, we've heard a lot about what Kentucky will be offensively this year, but defensively, I think there were at least some question marks about what they would be on that end of the floor. And again, you're going up against guys like Braden Smith, who's one of the best passers in recent memory in college basketball. Trey Kaufman-Renn, one of the best stars in college basketball that's only going to get better this season. And when you combine returning talent with TKR and Braden Smith on the Purdue side, and defensively, you do what you did against Purdue on Friday night. If I'm a Kentucky fan watching that, I'm very encouraged, because I saw a lot of good signs from that end of the floor, and there aren't as many question marks on the offensive side. Was that your same takeaway?
Absolutely. I've said that all preseason, really, that I think that if Kentucky makes the leaps defensively that some people are sort of expecting them to make, because quite frankly, Kentucky wasn't great last year. Man, they had to really turn it up in the last month or so of the year just to get to a top 50 defense in college basketball per KenPom. Like we were floating around 100 really for most of the season, and then it really changed late in the year. And I think that if Kentucky's going to make that leap to a top 10, top 20, whatever it may be defense this year, which based on Friday night and just my expectation personnel wise, I think that's very possible. If because of Coach Pope and because of the returning personnel, you almost take the offense as a little bit of a given, then I think if you can improve the defense like we're kind of expecting it to improve, then you're really looking at a legitimate contender for Kentucky this year. Because I don't have many worries about the offense, especially once you throw Jalen Lowe into the equation and what he'll bring as a playmaker. If Kentucky really can be what we saw glimpses of on Friday night defensively, then man, this group is probably one of the best teams in college basketball.
Jaden Quainton's coming off an ACL tear, an Arizona State transfer, but somebody that was highly coveted in the transfer portal, and as you already mentioned, is one of the best post defenders in the entire country, and somebody that you can really anchor that front line around Kentucky without him right now, still coming back from that, but expected to play whenever he is available this season, and he's only going to add to the dimensions of this team. How good can Kentucky be when they have their full complement of players? Is this truly the national championship team, Brandon, that you feel like with the NIL behind it, it probably needs to be this year?
I think so. Especially with my coaching background, I'm never going to be one that says, it's Final Four or bust or national championship or bust, because in a one and done tournament, like having that sort of an expectation just isn't realistic, especially with the parity of college basketball now. But yeah, I mean, when you spend whether it was $22 million or whether it was $14 million, like it didn't really matter. Kentucky spent as much or more than everybody else. I think we all know that, regardless of what the number actually was. And when you spend money like that, expectations come with it. Now, one of the things I would say is that pretty much every season for the last 100 years has been championship or bust at Kentucky, because that's just the way Big Blue Nation operates. But yeah, I think you have the pieces on this team to do that. Like you have improved playmaking from last year's team, whether that's Jalen Lowe, whether that's Denzel Aberdeen, certainly what Jasper Johnson showed on Friday night. Mo Diabate is kind of like a front court facilitator and playmaker, and I think that you're able, certainly including Otega Owe, SEC Player of the Year candidate, into that mix as well. Like positionally, you have playmakers at each spot. I think that you certainly, as we just talked about, improved defensively with throwing Mo Diabate in there, bringing Owe back, adding Malachi Moreno as a freshman center into the mix. Certainly when you get Jaden Quainton back, throwing him in there, Denzel Aberdeen as well. All these guys are plus defenders and guys that have won at a pretty high level as well at some other stops. And then I think that maybe the shooting would be the one thing that you didn't markedly improve from 24-25 to 25-26, but with the upside of guys like Trent Noah, Cam Williams, and maybe probably just more overall shooters, you probably don't have the level of shooters like a Kobe Bryant or Jackson Robinson. But I think when you look at the number of guys that can make 40 or 50 threes, there's probably more of those guys on this roster than there was last roster. So I just think that when you consider where Kentucky was last year as a Sweet 16 team that was kind of hounded with injuries all season long, if this group stays healthy, there's no reason to believe that they're not, at least a tier or two above where they were last year. And when you're a tier or two above a Sweet 16 team, there's only a few wins left, and that gets you, to Indianapolis for a Final Four.
Something that I think a lot of people might be caught off guard by this season is the fact that Kentucky-Louisville is on November 11th. It's not that classic end of December game right before you get into the heart of conference play. This game's going to come at you real fast at the beginning of the season. Why is it happening so early this year? And do you think that is good for Kentucky or bad for Kentucky that it's the second week of the season?
My answer is that scheduling is really hard, and sometimes breaks just happen certain way. Kentucky message boards would tell you that Louisville doesn't want to have to play against Jaden Quainton, so they moved the game up. But that's probably Big Blue Nation being Big Blue Nation. I'm not sure if I take a ton of stock into that, but regardless, yeah. I mean, is it good for Kentucky? I mean, probably not, because we're not going to be at full strength for that game. I mean, it would be hard to say it's good for Kentucky for it to be the third game of the season, but ultimately, you got to play the games, and a game on November 11th isn't going to make or break the season. Now, again, Kentucky fans need to win that game because we don't like Louisville a whole lot. But guess what? Louisville's a top 10 team in the country too. It's going to be at the Yum Center. Like, if you're not ready to win that game on November 11th, it doesn't change the expectations for Kentucky this season. But man, talk about an early season, much hyped game. I mean, these are two programs that obviously don't like each other, and kind of the rivalry has been renewed a little bit with new coaches in each place. Louisville now is kind of back from, quite frankly, being a dumpster fire for a few years. Now they're kind of on the level of Kentucky, competing nationally, or at least expected to compete nationally once again this season, which I think is good for the game and good for college basketball and certainly good for the rivalry. So I'm super excited for that game, whether it happens on November 11th or Christmas Eve or New Year's Eve. The two teams are going to compete like heck whenever they play the game, wherever they play the game. So ultimately, I don't think it matters a ton. But man, it's going to be one of the great kind of welcome to the college basketball season games that we're going to get in early November.
I'm excited to cover this Kentucky team this year for a lot of reasons. One, because the talent on the floor, but two, to continue on this theme. The non-conference schedule, to me, is absolutely outstanding this year. You have Louisville early. You'll play Michigan State in a neutral site game on Tuesday, November 18th. That'll be at MSG in New York. Then you play North Carolina at Rupp Arena on December 2nd. You're in Nashville against Gonzaga on December 5th. You have UNC and Gonzaga back-to-back in the first week of December. You take a little bit of a break against one of the worst teams in the country in NC Central. But then, how do you close the non-conference? Indiana, St. John's, and Bellarmine. But Indiana and St. John's right there back-to-back. Rick Pitino, obviously all the storylines there, being a former coach, coaching against Kentucky, his former player, and Mark Pope. I mean, they were just all over the place. You turn around, storylines, not just on the court with the players, but with the scheduling as well. Can you walk me through the thought process of how this schedule's set up, Brandon?
Yeah, I think it's all about Coach Pope, really wanting to drive home kind of that gold standard idea of Kentucky. And the gold standard doesn't mean, walking around with this holier than thou attitude that we're the best program in college basketball. It means that you're going to challenge yourself every time out on the court. Like, you're not ducking any opponents. You're going to spend the most in NIL. You're going to play the toughest teams every night out. You're going to embrace the high expectations the Big Blue Nation and the national media have for you at every turn. And I think that lends itself to preparing you for a tough run in March, when obviously you have to beat progressively tougher and tougher teams, it's 6 straight games to cut down the nets. And I think that it's going to be a heck of a lot of fun for Kentucky fans and just college basketball fans in general. I mean, not only do you get Kentucky Louisville with a ton of excitement and hype around it early in the season, but you mentioned the return of the UK-IU rivalry. I mean, heck, it's been 13 years now since these two teams have played, since the Watford shot happened and all that stuff at Assembly Hall. That's going to return this year with what'll be one of the greatest atmospheres at Rupp Arena of the season. And then certainly the storylines around St. John's, with coming up on 30 years since the 1996 national championship team that Coach Pitino led with Mark Pope as a captain. So a perfect time to return what's probably not necessarily a rivalry between Kentucky and St. John's, but certainly kind of a weird meeting between a beloved former coach who became hated and then kind of is now beloved again, oddly enough. So yeah, it's a heck of a non-conference schedule from a just a competitive standpoint, but from a storyline standpoint, you kind of check all the boxes as well. And it's cool that a couple of these games are at home. It's cool that a couple of other games are close by, being in Louisville and Nashville. There's going to be a big blue contingent at a lot of those games as well. We love traveling to Atlanta and New York and all those places as well. So you never have to worry about blue getting in, so to speak. But yeah, it's going to be a really fun non-conference schedule leading into what won't be the SEC of last year, but will still be a pretty brutal SEC schedule as well.
That leads into what I was just about to ask. The SEC this year, for people that maybe are just catching up on it, you don't need to go granular on every team, but overall, last year the SEC was the best conference in the history of the sport. Do you expect it to be at that level again this year? Do you think? I think some natural regression is not. I don't want that to come off as a bad thing, because it sounds bad, but at the same time, you're trying to compete with the same level of history that you had last year, and I'm not sure that that's to be expected again this year, or is it?
No, I think there will be some regression, but again, that's not to malign the Southeastern Conference. It's just not going to be the best conference we've ever seen in the history of college basketball. That's not exactly a slight against the competitiveness of the SEC. I still think it could very easily be the toughest conference in college basketball this season. It might just not stack up historically, at least on paper right now, as well. But I mean, you still have to contend with the defending national champions who were pretty much a perennial top 3, top 5 team, this season with a returning front court that's one of the best in the country. Certainly some transfer guards that'll give them a chance to just reload. And Arkansas, Tennessee, Alabama, all these teams certainly still have very high expectations going into this season. Kentucky certainly being one as well. That's a top 5 to top 10 team in the country. So by no means is the SEC falling off from where they were last year. It's just maybe not a historically great conference. It's quote unquote just maybe the best conference in college basketball still.
So Kentucky enters the season at number 4 on KenPom. Take that for whatever you want it to be with the portal and everything else. But you look at what they did in the portal: Jalen Lowe, Denzel Abertine, Diobate, Quaintance, Reese Potter coming over from Miami. A little local connection there. Probably not going to see a ton of minutes, but Reese Potter coming over from Miami. Cam Williams as well from Tulane. That's the transfer class. And you add on that a healthy selection of returnees. Otega Owe, the preseason player of the year in the SEC. Brandon Garrison, Colin Chandler. Jasper Johnson was phenomenal in that exhibition game the other night. I was really impressed by him, a freshman. Malachi Moreno, who I had the opportunity to watch Malachi in high school. I was impressed by him and how he stood his ground against Purdue the other night. Trent Noah is back. And then you have, obviously, now I'm going to mispronounce his name, the Croatian. He's a freshman, 6'11". How do you say it, Brandon?
Andrea Jelovic.
Tell the people about Andrea Jelovic.
He is a guy that if you kind of built, if you got into NBA 2K and sort of built a player to play for Coach Pope in the front court, he's probably the type of guy that you would build because he can shoot the basketball a little bit. He's 6'11", super mobile, super athletic. He's a passer. He's a rebounder. He's really the complete package. Now, how does that translate from the Adriatic League to Kentucky? I think you're going to see some growing pains at times, like the physicality, the speed of the game, some of those things you'll have to catch up with. But like he's kind of a jack of all trades. Maybe he's a master of none of them, but I think that he can do a lot of things at a pretty high level. And you've seen it in some of the preseason stuff. He stepped out and hit some threes. He missed his shots in the scrimmage against Purdue, but he rebounded it well. He was starting the break, like he would rebound it and go. Had a couple assists in transition. And I just think that, especially when you're waiting for Jaden Quaintance to come back, what Andrea Jelovic can provide as a guy that's played 2 seasons of professional basketball at a relatively high level, being able to throw him in there as a piece certainly add to some of that depth. And I think that, just overall the depth, what makes it exciting is like you don't need every single one of those names that you mentioned. You don't need every single one of them to be as good as they can be this year. Like you just need to hit on a few of those guys. Like if Colin Chandler makes the sophomore leap, we think he might, then that's great. Or if Cam Williams is as good at Tulane as he was, is as good this year as he was at Tulane last year, that's going to be awesome. Or if Malachi or Jasper really hit as a freshman, that's going to be great. But like you don't need every single one of those to check the box. But there's so many pieces that you can kind of keep plugging and playing until enough of them check the box that you have a really good, talented rotation of 9, 10, 11 guys.
All right, last question for you, and I'm asking this to everybody I have on, and I'll always offer it. If you don't want to make the prediction, I won't make you do it. But of the regular season, Kentucky right now on KenPom projected to go 24-7, 13-5 in the SEC. I think everybody, it's fair to say, has national championship expectations for a healthy Kentucky team. What's your prediction for this year's team? Give me a record and give me where you think this team goes.
Yeah, I think let's see. Let me do the math. Right? I mean,
31
overall,
games.
you would get 25-6, maybe. I'll split the difference a little bit with KenPom and what I was initially going to say, because I think that going better than 14-4 in the SEC is probably going to be a pretty tough task. Like I think 14-4 can probably win the league, and I think that Kentucky's going to have a chance to win the league. So I'll probably go 25-6 overall, 14-4 in the SEC, and I think that this is absolutely a team that can make a Final Four. And if I was sitting here today, especially with taking it with a grain of salt, what I saw on Friday, it would be hard for me if I really sat down and told you I'm putting down some money on some teams to make the Final Four. I don't know how I wouldn't include Kentucky in that group. So yeah, I'm going to go 25-6, 14-4, and a Final Four for Kentucky in 2026.
I would agree with you on all of that. I think that's a great way to look at this season, and it's certainly an exciting one to be a Kentucky basketball fan. Brandon, I appreciate you coming on. As always, tell the people where they can find you on Kentucky Sports Radio and wherever else.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Paul. You can follow me on Twitter at BRamseyKSR. That's the best place to stay up to date with everything that I'm doing content-wise, but all the written stuff, which I do scouting reports for all the opponents, film breakdowns after all the games. So for kind of X's and O's, basketball nerds, Kentucky Sports Radio will be a good place to find all of that written content. And then also host my own show, the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show, which will be coming back in full strength for the season. We do a lot of kind of chalk talk, breakdown stuff there as well. Have a couple episodes up from the Purdue game. So again, go subscribe to the Brandon Ramsey College Basketball Show on Twitter or on YouTube, and then at BRamseyKSR on Twitter.
I can vouch for you on Twitter. I love the clips that you put out. I love the breakdowns that you do. It's super helpful for me sometimes if I need to go back and figure out what went well, what didn't. You're the Twitter account I go to check a lot of that out for Kentucky. So I appreciate all that you do, and certainly you make this show better, both by being on it and by helping with the content that I can then talk about Kentucky with. So I appreciate you as always, Brandon. We'll have to have you on a couple of times again throughout the season. Best of luck to Kentucky, and enjoy the ride, man. It should be a fun one.
Absolutely. Thanks, Paul.